So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to Radio Works World. My name is Gill Barham, the Miracle Molecule host, and today I'm having a light-hearted conversation with one of my all-time nutritional gods and gurus, the wonderful Steven Horne from America. Hello, Steven.
Hi. I always get nervous when people put me on that kind of a pedestal.
Well, I'm so absolutely chuffed and delighted that you've come on. You've agreed to come on my show because, you know, I've been working with nutrition and functional nutrition and with the companies that we both work with for about 7 or 8 years. And so I've been following your Tree of Light stuff and also your functional nutrition stuff as well. So, you know, this is absolutely brilliant for me. So I know who you are, but what we're firstly going to do is, in case there's anybody else in the world that might not know who you are, I'd like you to tell us in your words.
I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't know who I am. Yeah, well, I'm an herbalist, I'm an author, I'm a teacher. And the primary thing I'm interested in is helping people identify and remove the root cause of their health problems and just and fix the underlying cause instead of treating the symptoms. And it's not just about physical health. I'm interested in emotional health and spiritual health and mental health and in the health of our relationships and the health of our, political system, the health of our planet. I mean, to me, healing is to make whole. And so when we are creating unity and harmony and whatever aspect of our life we're looking at, we're engaged in healing. So that's me in a nutshell. So,
well, that was the nutshell, because I know that you've been past president of the American Herbalist Association, and you're an iridologist as well, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm a certified comprehensive iridology instructor with IPA, the International Iridology Practitioners Association. And I've been on the board of that organization, and I've been on the board of directors of the American Herbalist Guild, as well as was president for a number of years.
So, in other words, guys, Steven knows his stuff. But today, we're not actually going to allow Steven to tell you about his stuff, but I am going to bring Steven back onto my Vitality show, if I can persuade him, because then I am going to grill him about all of the things that he does on your behalf, because the Vitality show is all about introducing and highlighting and showcasing complementary and alternate therapies. And so it's really, really important that if I can persuade Steven to come and talk about that then.
Well, I'm sure
today, good. Well, if we have a nice time today, I'm sure you will. So today, though, this show, Steven, is all about the person behind the brand, the person behind the business, behind, what it is that you do, your passion and purpose, on the basis that, people aren't really interested in what you do until they know a little bit about you, or they know, love and trust you. And so there's a great program in the UK called Desert Island Discs, and it does a very similar thing. It's the longest running show on one of our BBC radios. And what it does is it kind of does a similar thing in that it brings people from all walks of life in, and through a kind of formula allows them to showcase or to give a little bit of themselves, and actually for us, the listener, to understand actually what makes that person tick, if you like. So I've designed a series of questions that everybody gets. Now, just to tell you, Steven has no idea what I'm going to ask him. Have you, Steven?
No, I don't. So this is kind of going to be an interesting interview. Usually people are picking my brain about what I know, not asking about me. So that's
there we go.
A little bit different.
It is. So everybody gets the same question. So I'm going to start in with the same scenario that I start with everybody. So, Steven, I'd like you to imagine that you are on holiday and you're going into, you're in a nice posh hotel, and you've got into the lift, or the elevator, I should say, on the bottom floor. And one other person gets into that elevator with you. And up you go to your very nice, lovely room, your suite of rooms, or whatever it is where you're staying. You're due to meet somebody for lunch up there, so you're on your way to lunch. And you get to about the 6th or 7th floor, and the lift stops. And you're informed that it's going to take at least 2 hours for this lift to be mended, but it's all okay. You've got enough air, you've got enough oxygen, you've got enough water, and you've even got windows, so you're not going to get claustrophobic. My question to you is, of anybody in the world that you could choose, who would that other person be that got into the lift with you? Who would you like to spend 2 or 3 hours with, completely uninterrupted, and ask all the questions that you'd want to ask, dead or alive?
Dead or alive?
Yeah.
Oh, well, if you're including dead people, I mean, I would actually want to talk with Jesus Christ, but.
Oh, that's amazing. I've done 2 interviews today, and you've both said the same thing.
Yeah, I mean that would be who I'd want to be stuck with, if it was someone who's not living on the earth as a human being today. Because that's kind of the core of my belief system. I'm Christian. I don't belong to any particular religion, but I have, since my teens, been a follower of the teachings of Jesus Christ, and that's really kind of the core of who I am.
And what specifically would you ask him?
I would just be open to, like, I don't know, I'd be talking to him about whatever came to my mind at the time, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, probably a lot of it would, for what I'd be saying, is not asking him things, but thanking him. But, I really, just to kind of say the idea, I read the New Testament when I was a teenager, and I read the Sermon on the Mount, and I read things like love your enemies and don't judge, and blessed are the peacemakers, and all of these things, and then and turning the other cheek. And then I read later on in the New Testament, it says, if any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether I speak of myself, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. And I thought, okay, Jesus, I'm going to put you to the test. I'm going to try to live these things. I'm going to try to turn the other cheek. I'm going to try to love my enemies. I'm going to try to do all these things. And I started with the fact that my younger brother annoyed me constantly, and I would hit him. when he'd get on my nerves, I'd like slug him or whatever. And I go, okay, I'm going to stop slugging my younger brother, and it was really interesting. The way I devised to do it was I gave my brother 100 chances that I wanted to slug him and I wouldn't. And I think I got down to about 77 and I didn't want to do it anymore. and that whole thing has just influenced my entire life, from the beginning to the end. I mean, it's just what I try to live by all the time, doing to others, others with you, others doing to you, that sort of thing.
It's interesting because the lady that I spoke to earlier on, what she wanted to know, and I think you and I might find this fascinating, and it's interesting that you and I probably wouldn't ask this question, is what she wanted to know. Well, how come people die? How come there's cancer? How come there's illness in the world? How come people have to suffer? And it's quite interesting because actually...
Well, he's already answered that question for me.
Well, yeah.
See, I mean, because that's the other thing. When I was 19 and I surrendered my life to God, I actually, started learning how to pray and meditate and listen for the answers.
Yeah.
So, to me, prayer is a conversation, not a monologue.
Yeah. And I think also, what I've come to believe, and this is fairly, recent for me, is the concept that actually, the way that Jesus operated, if you like, was that if you once you understand the law of attraction and the law of vibration and alignment, and that there is no illness in the world, it's all, there's nobody to be fixed, if you like, is that actually the way that Jesus was seen to heal was that he just saw the good in people, not only in their soul, but also in their body too. And that vibration, that kind of influence just meant that people, got up and walked away, and it was seen to be a miracle. But actually it's just that greater sense of actually you are all perfect. And it's quite interesting in our world because we're almost setting ourselves up as healers and fixers, but actually what I love about what you do, and you're in my book, is that it's not about symptomatic relief. It's about building health and getting people back into that ultimate alignment and vibration, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I was drugged by the Spirit into emotional healing. I mean, literally.
Yeah.
And that was where I really understood a bit of an echo, which is I've got to get out of my head listening to. When I got into that, I really started to understand things on a spiritual level that I'd never understood before. And one of the things that I do in emotional healing is it starts from the premise there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you except that you believe that something's wrong with you. And therefore, I have to get you to stop believing there's something wrong with you. And and what that really is that you have to see people separate from their behavior. You can see that there are I prefer, rather than good or evil, functional or dysfunctional things that lead to happy consequences and good consequences, and things that lead to unpleasant, painful consequences. And we all have choice. And the way the universe is set up is that we get to choose, and when we choose certain things, we create pain or experience of suffering that tells us this was not a good choice. And when we experience pleasure, joy, happiness, love, peace, when we make choices that are good for our souls. Okay, so we get to choose, but we don't get to choose the consequence. The consequence is built into the choice. So that's why this is a school. We get to play around, do what we want, experiment with what we want. And then what happens is, as we're doing our will, if you will, and trying to do things that are actually not good and get pleasure out of it, then we get upset with God for not letting us have pleasure in things that aren't good. I mean, that's really the way it goes. One time, for a while, I stopped reading scripture because the way I was raised, was with this judgmental, punishing God. And when I came to encounter the loving God, the God that was all love and completely supportive and no judgment, whatever, it became kind of hard for me to read scriptures because I'd see all this judgment. And then I was going back and reading some things in the Old Testament and encountering these things, warning about destruction and everything. And it goes, there it is. Okay, judgmental, punishing God. The Spirit said to me, you're reading this wrong. I'm not responsible for any of this that goes on down here. I gave man dominion over this plane of existence, and you create this, not me. Okay?
And isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting what we're manifesting at the moment in terms of the political situation in your country and the political situation in our country?
If you were stuck to people who are actually living, I would want to be in the elevator with Donald Trump right now.
Yeah.
I would like to pick his brain. I've been following that very closely, and looking at what mainstream media says about him, and then actually looking at what he's really doing. And it's like night and day. It's diametrically different that you can't imagine. I've been aware for a long time because of emotional healing that there's all this problem in Hollywood and in politics and major, people in government with pedophilia and all kinds of corrupt stuff. Well, there have been 3,500 pedophiles arrested under the Trump administration in the last 6 months.
Haven't seen anything about that.
No, you don't see things like that. You don't see things like the fact that he lifted there's been a ban. The IRS could go after and take away the tax-exempt status of a church if they spoke out on a political issue. And Trump signed an executive order to do away with this. His churches need to be able to preach whatever they feel is morally right. I mean, there's things that he's doing that nobody gets reports on in the mainstream media. Okay? And I think it's because there's so much corruption that they're totally terrified of what he might do.
And I think it's fear driven as well, isn't it? I think that's the whole point about it. Is the whole thing is fear driven.
Okay, we're in a big awakening right now. There's there's shifts happening all over the world, and it's really quite remarkable. Really.
It is, isn't it? It is, isn't it? And I think the more you become aware of yourself, the more you become aware of, the things that are going on in the world as well. That's certainly the case for me. So let me take you back to your lift with Jesus Christ.
Right.
And on the basis that he's hungry and so are you, I'm going to magic you up a lovely meal with something to drink. So what would Steven Horne like to eat and drink?
Oh, wow. Okay, my favorite is Indian food.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I want to have like a nice meal with some nice curries and lamb vindaloo, chicken sog.
Oh my, hot curries too, vindaloo.
Yes. Well, no, not all of them hot. Chicken sog, vegetables, korma, maybe. Some different.
Cool.
Things.
And what would you drink with it?
Water.
Water. Okay.
That's my normal beverage of choice is water.
Yeah. Or indeed liquid chlorophyll.
Yeah. Well, I might put something in it, Yeah. Water. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting that two people should have said that on the one day. Fascinating. Okay, so now I'd like to take you back to the 18-year-old Steven. So are you willing to share with us what the 18-year-old Steven was doing? Where were you living? What were you doing? What was happening for you at 18?
I grew up in Salt Lake City, so 18, when I turned 18, I just graduated from high school because my birthday is in June. And so my 18th year, I was going to the University of Utah for my first year of college. I'm living at my parents' house, and the college was a mile and a half from my house. And so I would walk to campus in the morning, go to school, and then I'd come home in the afternoon. And then I had a little job cleaning the third floor of the IBM building in the evening. So that was another mile in the opposite direction, and then walk down and do my work and come home. And that's pretty much what
were you studying? What were you studying at university?
I was actually studying broadcasting. I started out majoring in broadcasting and then went to public relations and finally to speech communications. But communications was my major. I was interested in communications, and I was very interested in instructional media, in using video and photography and all kinds of things to teach people things, to communicate messages.
And now look at the world we live in, which is completely driven by videos.
Oh, yeah. In fact, what's really interesting is I was actually taking a field botany class in my first semester of college, and my botany teacher wanted me to major in botany, and I was majoring in broadcasting. And she says, well, what are you going to do with broadcasting? And I in high school, we'd had a closed circuit TV studio, and we'd made a music video. The military had come to our school recruiting, and they'd had a little mini tank in the parking lot and displays all over. We'd gone out and shot all this black and white video footage, and we spliced together that to a minute and a half of the song "One Tin Soldier." You remember
One Tin Soldier?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
On bloody morning after, one tin soldier rides away. Anyway, it took us about 10 hours because we didn't have fancy video editing software. We had to roll the tapes back and cut it in at the right time. But and so I had this idea of I was going to create video backdrops to musical songs. And I told her this, and she says, well, that's a ridiculous idea. I can't imagine there would ever be a market for something like that. and I love that story because it's a perfect illustration of the principle that Ralph Waldo Emerson said in his essay, Genius. To believe in your own ideas is to be genius. That the essence of genius is to believe in your own ideas, because what happens is that you come up with these ideas and other people say, oh, that's stupid.
You can't do that, yeah.
And those, he says, though our ideas come back to us with this, how do you put it? It was like this majesty coming back to you. You thought, well, I thought of that. Why didn't I do that? That's been a lesson to me to not be afraid to try something new, to venture out.
And presumably you've passed that on to your children.
Yeah, that's one thing I very much encourage my kids to do, was just to follow their dreams, follow their,
Yeah,
you know,
their
kind
intuition
of
and
what
their
they
heart.
wanted to do. Because I didn't feel like, you know, like I had been encouraged to do that. I was, encouraged to be practical, and you have to think about so anyway,
Yeah, generation apart, I suppose.
yeah.
And what were you listening to at 18? What music were you listening to at 18? Can you remember?
Um, I really can't. Our family didn't have a stereo until I bought one when I was 18.
Yeah. That's the
And
same as my house. My brother had one at 18, I think, and that was the
I
first
think
one.
I bought a radio when I was 16. But
Yeah.
I do remember I bought a record of Glenn Campbell sitting
Oh,
on
okay.
the bay, but didn't have much music. My parents really liked, Lawrence Welk.
Uh-huh.
So they would watch Lawrence Welk every Sunday night. But I didn't have a lot of music,
Yeah.
in our house.
Okay. And so that was 18. So what was happening for you then by the time you got to 35? How had life changed for you at 35?
35. Let me figure out when that would have been. Oh, okay. 35. That would put me at 1989. All right. Well, that's interesting because I had I was still working at Nature Sunshine Products at that time. I had for 3 years been teaching a school for them called Manager School, and they had made me national sales training manager, and I figured I had risen to the level of my incompetence. In a book called The Peter Pitts Principle. But I was realizing I needed to leave Nature Sunshine because as an employee of the company, I was way inhibited in what I could say,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be free to talk about, what I really knew in terms of what herbs and supplements and everything could do. So it was actually at the end of 1989 that I quit working for Nature Sunshine and went on my own.
Yeah, that wasn't just to explain to people that wasn't a Nature Sunshine kind of quashing what you knew. That was the fact that they had to abide by.
Yeah, it's government regulations. Government regulations won't let them make claims about their products. So
we can, but they can't.
Yeah. Well, they're even getting tighter, not wanting the distributors to make claims.
Yeah, that's true.
Right now, so it's a problem. Which is a shame, because I think that I'm a big believer in the whole idea of freedom of speech, including freedom of commercial speech. I believe that if people are caught lying or deceiving, that should be a crime. But I don't think you should prejudge speech and say, well, because you're saying something that we don't agree with or we don't think is proven or whatever, that is false. I mean, knowledge progresses by people throwing their opinions into the marketplace and throwing their experiences in the marketplace and so forth. And so I think that's one of the travesties of what's going on in this country is the inhibiting of sharing that information. Because if we could freely share what we know, if I wasn't even inhibited in sharing what I know, there are millions more people could be helped.
Yeah. Absolutely. I just want to tell you that I posted on. I tried to boost a post on ED. So I'm not even sure I'm allowed to say it on Facebook because I'm in Facebook jail basically because I posted how a certain supplement that I use, which is synergy worldwide make ProArginine, will help with dysfunction, male dysfunction, if you know what I mean. And I am banned from Facebook because I used that term, even though it was in a medical context. So, there seems to be very much control over things, and it almost seems to be, you're almost like, you can say anything you like about pharmaceuticals because they are, that's where the power comes from. But if you try and counteract that with what we really know, which is, as you say, preventative and building health, is that we're kind of.
Well, it's why I quit trusting mainstream media. because after
Yeah.
being involved with natural healing and seeing how well these things work and how effective they were and how safe they were, and then looking at mainstream media promoting pharmaceuticals and telling you how dangerous herbs and supplements were, I realized that they're driven by the corporate interests of their advertisers and certain big industries. And I realized that they can't be trusted. And if they're that wrong about this, what else are they wrong about? And so I started to question everything. And I think that's actually a good attitude to have in life, is to question everything. I even think the New Testament supports that. Prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. I think to be open-minded to new ideas is good, but you should also test those ideas and see what works and what really doesn't work. And that's the philosophy I've adopted. And it's not just with natural health, it's with a lot of other things. Things I've learned about parenting, relationships, on and on and on. I'll search out what I consider to be good information, and then I'll put it to the test in my own life and see if it actually works. And then if it does, I'll share it.
But what's interesting, isn't it, is that we live in the world of Google, don't we? And I often talk to people about the fact that we've all done it. We're all our own GP, our own Google practitioner. Coming back to health now, and that there is so much misinformation out there. And how actually do you tell? How do you sort out the wheat from the chaff and the facts and the myths about everything? It could be a very overwhelming and scary world, can't it?
Yeah, it can, but it's not for me.
No.
Because I have this incredible confidence in my own ability to discern things.
Yeah. And I think
not that I'm always right, but at least to discern what is right for me. And it's based on the fact I have threefold test for truth. Okay. It has to make sense to my mind. It has to bring peace, a feeling of peace and love and whatever to my heart. And it has to work when I put it into practice.
Yeah.
If something is scary, in other words, if it's fear-based, or it's stirring me up to try to make me angry, I immediately suspect it's not true. Because where God is, there is peace. So when something hits me and and my brain goes, whoa, and my heart goes, I recognize that as probably true. And then if I put it to the test and actually do it and it works, then I say, okay, that's truth. But I don't believe in fear-mongering, and I don't believe in stirring people up to contention. I think all of these things are illusions. And one of the things I've tried to teach people in emotional healing is you can know if the thoughts you're thinking are true or not by whether they bring you a feeling of peace, love, joy, and happiness. If they don't, they're not true. Your thinking is off. This is God's way of telling you whether you're on track or off track. When you're on track, you'll tune into peace and love and joy and happiness. And when you're off track, you'll be angry, sad, fearful, etc. And that's God saying you're off track.
Yeah.
What's your thinking?
Absolutely.
Okay, now you're getting really insights into how I think and work, right?
I just think it's wonderful because it's something that, in the last sort of year for me, there's been a big actually. And, when you listening to your own intuition and understanding that emotion and being able to sit with it and react to it, because people all the time would say to me, oh, well, if I were to make a judgment about something or somebody, there's always somebody with a different opinion that will question it a bit, like you were describing earlier. But the joy of learning how to trust your own intuition, and as you say, understanding that sense of alignment and allowing all of that good stuff to come in so that you can then make the decisions based is just a really happy place to be.
Yeah, and the other thing is that you realize that when that's happening, it's guiding you. It's not guiding everybody else. Whatever everybody else is doing is not my business, right? Because they have their path in life and they have their lessons in life, and I'm there to be helpful, but I can't sit in judgment on their life path, and I can't decide. I mean, my dad said, wouldn't it be boring if everyone in the world was exactly like you? And so I've come to appreciate the fact that people are different and people have different opinions, and listening to different opinions helps me sometimes, there'll be someone saying something over here and someone saying something over here, and then I'll listen to both sides, and that'll help me find the ground in the middle where there's balance between those ideas.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to listen to things that are different. People have different opinions than you. I'm very open-minded about listening to other people that way,
And have you always been the same, Stephen? Because certainly I've noticed that, getting older is such a blessing, really, because you have the confidence to be able to trust those things and to make your own opinions. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, that's been a process for me, because in the beginning, I was so used to this authoritarian model of, like I said, the judgmental, punishing God, and so afraid of making my own decisions. And it took me a while to start to learn to trust my own inner guidance, because when I follow my inner guidance, things would usually go quite well. And when I would let other people talk me out of following my inner guidance, I'd get into trouble. And so, but since I've always been a person who likes to please people and likes, to keep other people happy, that was the struggle I had for a long, long time. Now I've gotten to the point where I realize I can't let other people dissuade me from my own inner peace and my own inner sense of what's right for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I really resonate with that as well. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So I've got some light-hearted, kind of quick round questions now. So they just kind of require a 1 or 2 word answer. Just to tell you, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so are you a TV or a radio person?
Neither.
Neither. Okay. Fiction or non-fiction?
Both.
Okay. That's fine. Are the oldest, middle, or youngest child?
Oldest.
Oldest child, okay. And at school, were you the class clown, the goody two, one under the radar, or were you a bit of a handful?
I would probably have been considered the goody two shoes,
The goody two. You're a good boy. Okay, and what would you say is your best habit?
My best habit? Praying.
And your worst habit?
What is my worst habit? Not exercising.
Yeah, okay. It's very good to make excuses, isn't it? I'm too busy. And what do you do to relax?
I like to be outdoors.
Yeah.
I like to garden, or I like to go hiking, or I like to go swimming at the lake, or whatever. I live in a place where you can do that.
Yeah. Stephen lives in Utah. I've been to Utah. I've been to Spanish Fork as well, by the way, and so I know the area. And do you have any nicknames, or have you ever had any nicknames, pen names, pet names?
No, I don't think I've ever had any nicknames. Well, when I was at YMCA camp counselor in my late teens, I tried to get people to call me the flower guy, and so the other camp counselors said I was the flower fella instead, because I was so interested in the plants, edible and medicinal plants. But anyway, I've never really had a nickname.
Okay, and you probably don't know this, but my first big passion is singing. So I'm a singer. So if we were out together at an event and I dragged you up on stage with me, what would be your karaoke song?
Oh, wow. That's a hard one. I actually do like to spontaneously break into singing when I'm happy, sort of like in a musical. I'll just start singing something that comes to my head, but it varies with my mood. And I rewrite the lyrics to songs too, because I don't like the lyrics, The songs I probably sing the most are camp songs that I sang as a camp counselor with the kids. Like, there's moose, drinking all the juice at the store, that kind of thing.
Okay, cool. I'm not sure I could help you out with that one, but I'd be there in support. Okay, and so I'm going to paint another scenario for you now. As I've mentioned before, I spent a month in your lovely country with my husband not last year, but the year before. We did 8 states. We did 3,300 miles.
Wow.
Yeah. I had an absolutely glorious time. And for the whole time we were away, we were together for, apart from about 5 hours when Peter hired a Harley Davidson and went off into the desert. And for the whole time we spent together, there was not a crossword between us at all. So if I was to organise a holiday for you and take out all the stress by organising all the flights and the hotels and everything, who would you take on holiday that you could spend a month with without a crossword?
I'd take my wife that I just married 2 weeks ago.
For you?
We get along splendidly when we're not having to deal with her teenage sons.
Yeah. There you go. Brilliant. Okay, I don't think we need to say any more than that at all. Okay, now I do have another music question, and I know that you, not particularly music focused, but one of the things that we're doing with this series, we're making it into a book called Your Heart Matters, Light-Hearted Conversations with People of Significance. And it's actually going all the way around the world, starting in October. We're following the Jules Verne around the world in 80 days route. So it's actually coming to a town near you. I think it's San Francisco is probably one of the US cities, I know. So we're inviting all the contributors to be part of that book, and it's going to do this. But we're also putting a song list together. Gets to choose one song that they would like to be included into the list of all of the people that I've interviewed. And I'd like it to be a song that makes you feel lighthearted.
A song that makes me feel lighthearted. I might have to think about that one. Get back to you later about that.
Okay, you can add it to me. You can just send me the song so that I can find it.
About that. I know there's some songs I like, and because primarily I like kind of like folk music. And they're kind of like not normal chart. So I'll have to think about it. I'll have to look at my playlist and see which one.
You can choose one, because I put you on the spot. I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
I am a big country and bluegrass fan, by the way. I play a lot of bluegrass music, so I probably like it, whatever you choose. Okay, so we're nearly at the end of our light-hearted conversation, but this is the most important question for me, because you know that I've written a book, The Heart of a Woman. Mm-hmm. By the way, I've highlighted, now there are all sorts of quotes in my book, but Steven Horne, ladies and gentlemen, is the only person that has 2 quotes in my book. He has this one, which is, wait, I'm going to read them. I'm going to read here. I have to read them. I've highlighted them. So this is the main quote, which is the one that I really, really work to, which is, we need to stop treating disease and start building good health. Mm-hmm. So that features very, very highly in the building health part of my book. And the other one I've chosen is all to do with our stressful living and the toxic world that we live in. And I love this quote because you said we have internal mechanisms designed to break down toxins, but when the cocktail of chemicals overwhelm the body's detoxification mechanisms, the body is in a critical position. And I go on to say, so is your body in a critical position?
Yeah.
So thank you very much for those. So my book is called The Heart of a Woman, How to Look After the Heart You Give to the World. There's lots of information about the men in it as well, by the way. But what I want to know from you, Steven, and I know that you're going to have some brilliant answers for this, is I'd like to know what you do to look after your physical heart, so the heart that beats 350 million times or whatever it is in a lifetime. And also I'd like to know what you do to look after the heart you give to the world, so your emotional and your spiritual heart. You've given us a little bit of an insight, but maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about those 2 things.
Yeah. Well, I just had an EKG and they said it was a really amazing that my heart was really, really good, 63. So I must be taking good care of my heart. But I primarily take care of my health by just eating healthy. I'm trying to eat a healthy diet and avoid chemicals and so forth. So physically, that's what I do for my body as a whole, including my heart. But what I do to take care of my heart to the world is really the time I spend in prayer and meditation, trying to connect with that and stay connected to that place of inner peace and love, and not allowing the things that go on in the world to pull me out of that. Not that they don't pull me out of it and I have to go back to it, but I do try to stay connected with that and operate from that place, as much as I possibly can, and so I do take time every day to contemplate, to be praying and seeking always to maintain that feeling of peace and love and harmony within my own being. That's really very important to me.
Yeah. And I think as in the roles that we have been kind of put on here to do, I believe, I think it's really important that for me, it's about people understanding that I'm not some kind of, we're not setting ourselves up as no see all, know all, perfect beings. We're just here as some sort of channel and funnel to be able to say, well, this is the stuff that we know. And we know that for some people, these are the things that you need to kind of do on a regular basis and create some good habits. And that actually the work that we do on ourselves is much more of the important aspect of the day than anything other than we do. Would you agree?
I would agree, because first of all, I believe that every person has a purpose here. And most people don't find their purpose. They get distracted by the world and they lose their purpose. For me, trying to stay connected to that purpose is because when I'm connected to that purpose, there's a flow. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's like
I absolutely do, yeah.
Flow in life. It's like something is moving you, and it's graceful and it's easy and things flow. And when you get away from that purpose and off track, you kick against pricks. Things become hard. They become difficult. You struggle. And so trying to maintain that place where you're in that flow of flowing with your life purpose, doing what you're here to do. And I find when I'm doing that, I don't have to worry about money. I don't have to worry about things. That all just kind of flows naturally, as a byproduct of that. When I get worried about money and I get worried about the relationships, I get worried about this, worried about that, the flow stops and life becomes a struggle. And so for me, trying to maintain that flow is, the very, very critical part of who I am.
Yeah. And it would be, it would be lovely if we could really help people to understand the importance of that. I know that, as a wellness coach or whatever it is that we've set ourselves up, or as an herbalist or whatever it is, people might have an opinion about what is important and that kind of symptomatic offer that we seem to be giving them. But if we could spend more time talking about that issue, then the whole world.
Well, I've seen people with emotional healing where we go in and we work on those things that are blocking them from manifesting who they are. And when that clears, I've seen physical illnesses disappear like that. Disappear. They disappear.
Yeah.
And that's where the real healing takes place, because when you're in flow with that, then what you need is given to you as you need it. You don't take thought. You, like the lily of the field or the birds of the air, like this is in the New Testament, you're just taken care of. You're taken care of.
Yeah.
That's really a nice place to be,
Yeah. Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our light-hearted conversation. I hope you have.
I have. This has been a very fun interview. I really appreciate the questions and the conversation.
Don't forget to come back to me with your music choice. So before we go, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what's coming up for you in the next month, up till Christmas. What are you excited about?
Oh, I have a free webinar coming up in 2 weeks called There's a Positive Purpose in All Your Negative Emotions. Because I'm also going to do a class, and I plan to write a book about that. And also I have my manager school, which is a class I taught for Nature Central back in the 80s, but I'm going to teach an updated version of it by a webinar starting this month too. And so I'm excited about those things. And our book, Modern Herbal Dispensatory, is on Amazon and elsewhere, and it's been doing well. And looking forward to getting the next book out, Modern Herbal Medicine, second edition.
And I've just put your website up on the screen here, and we've gone for the modern herbal medicine remedies, I should say. But people can find all of the information about you through that website for now, can't they?
Yeah, it's actually Modern Herbal Medicine, but
oh, is it?
Although I think Modern Herbal Remedies still goes to the same website.
I copied it from your link directly, so it should.
Okay. Yeah, and then they're the same website. They can also just look me up as Steven Horne on the internet, and my website's come like on the first page.
Yeah, and you have a Facebook page as well that people can.
Yes, I have a Facebook page as well. So
brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, and thank you for getting up early in the morning. And getting
you're welcome. Okay.
And I will be sending you some information and trying to arrange something so that we can do the Vital Show, and then we can talk much more about. We'll choose what we're going to talk about. We'll fill some gaps in with some of your work that you actually do, and that will be much more sort of therapy based, that interview. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.